On December 26, 1943, at 0615 hours, Captain Shogo Takuchi stood beside Kawasaki Ki-61, manufacturer number 263, at Cape Gloucester Airfield on New Britain, staring at an engine that refused to start. The aircraft had been his personal mount for 8 months. 2 white fuselage bands showed it belonged to the 2nd Chutai Commander. An eagle insignia decorated the left side of the cockpit. Red 4-pointed stars marked the wing gun ports. The aircraft had carried him through dozens of combat missions over New Guinea. But this morning, the Kawasaki HAR-40 engine would not fire. Takeuchi was 25 years old and commander of the 2nd Chutai in the 68th Centi, with 19 confirmed victories. He had flown K-61s since April, when his unit changed from the Nakajima K-27. The 68th Centi had been the first Imperial Japanese Army Air Force unit to get the new fighter. They deployed to Weywork in New Guinea in June, then moved operations to support airfields across the region, as the campaign got more intense. Cape Gloucester Airfield sat on the northwestern tip of New Britain, 230 miles west of Rabaul. The field served as a forward base for Japanese fighters defending against American bomber raids. But by late December, the tactical situation had fallen apart. American forces were getting ready to invade Cape Gloucester. Intelligence reported Marine divisions gathering for an amphibious assault. Japanese command ordered all usable aircraft to be withdrawn to Rabaul immediately. Takeuchi's K-61 was not usable. The HAR-40 engine had been giving trouble for weeks. Oil use was high. Cylinder head temperatures ran hot, even at idle. The day before, during a patrol mission, the engine had started running rough at altitude. Takeuchi landed and reported the problem to the ground crew. The mechanics worked all night trying to fix the issue. They checked spark plugs, adjusted valve clearances, and tested magnetos. Everything looked normal. But when they tried to start the engine at dawn, it would not fire. The starter motor cranked. The propeller turned over a compression seemed enough, but combustion would not start. Either the ignition system had completely failed, or fuel was not reaching the cylinders. Without the right tools and replacement parts, the mechanics could not repair it in the field. Takeuchi made the decision at 0640. He would fly a different aircraft back to Rabaul. His personal Ki-61, manufacturer number 263, would be left behind. The ground crew would try to hide it near the runway in case they could get it back later, but everyone knew the truth. The aircraft would almost certainly be captured when the Americans landed. At 0700 hours, Takeuchi took off in another Ki-61 and left for Rabaul. Behind him, mechanics pushed manufacturer number 263 off the runway into a grove of palm trees at the edge of the airfield. They covered it with cut vegetation. Then they evacuated with the remaining ground personnel. The aircraft stayed hidden at Cape Gloucester for 4 days. On December 30th, United States Marines from the 1st Marine Division captured the airfield during the start of Operation Backhander a Patrol, found the camouflaged Ki-61 that afternoon. The aircraft was intact. The fuselage bands were visible under the vegetation. The eagle marking on the cockpit showed it was a command aircraft. Marines from the intelligence section examined it right away. The Ki-61 was different from any Japanese fighter the Americans had captured before. Most captured Japanese aircraft were badly damaged. This one showed no battle damage. The engine was complete. The instruments were all in place. The weapons were still installed. 2 12.7mm Ho 103 machine guns in the forward fuselage and 2 7.7mm Type 89 machine guns in the wings. The aircraft was a Ki-61-1 Co, the first production version. It had been built at Kawasaki's Kagamigahara factory in April 1943. Construction number 263, uncoded serial number 163. The Marines reported the find to the Technical Air Intelligence Unit. TIU officers arrived at Cape Gloucester on January 2, 1944. They recorded every detail of the aircraft. Measurements were taken. Photos captured every angle. The engine was checked. The flight controls were tested. The fuel system was traced. The electrical system was mapped. Everything was noted. This was the first complete Ki-61 the Allies had captured. For 18 months, American pilots had been fighting it over. New Guinea intelligence reports called it the Tony. Early sightings made people think it might be a German Messerschmitt Bf 109 or an Italian Macchi C202 painted in Japanese colors. Its real identity was unknown until now. Technical checks revealed the truth. The Ki-61 was fully Japanese in design. The engine was a license-built Kawasaki HAR40 based on the German Daimler-Benz DB601. But the airframe was original Kawasaki engineering. The fuselage had a semi-triangular cross-section. The fuselage was narrow and deep. The wings were fairly small for a fighter of this weight, which meant high wing loading. The landing gear was normal with fixed slots in the front edges of the wings. The cooling system used wing-mounted radiators, which was unusual for Japanese fighters because they usually had radial engines. The discovery answered questions that had confused American intelligence since the Ki-61 first appeared in combat pilots. Said that the Tony could dive faster than any other Japanese fighter. It could keep high speeds in level flight. It could take more battle damage than the lighter Zero, but it could not turn as tightly as other Japanese planes. The airframe explained why. High wing loading caused higher stall speeds and bigger turn radii. The liquid-cooled engine was heavier than similar radial engines, moving the center of gravity forward. These factors together made an aircraft built for speed and firepower instead of maneuvering. The captured Ki-61 was sent to Eagle Farm Airfield near Brisbane, Australia, in March 1944. There, TYU technicians tried to make the engine work. The original problem that had stopped the plane at Cape Gloucester was a broken magneto. After replacing it, the HAR40 engine started normally. The aircraft was test-flown a lot. American test pilots checked its performance against captured Japanese fighters. The Ki-61 was faster than the Zero in level flight and in dives. It had better acceleration. The weapons were heavier and more powerful, but in long-turning fights, the Zero could turn more easily. American pilots said the Ki-61 needed careful energy management. It was best in fast attacks from high up. It could escape chasing fighters using its speed, but in a low-speed turning fight, it was weaker. These traits matched reports from New Guinea. The intelligence value of manufacturer number 263 was more than just technical data. The plane showed Japanese fighter ability in late 1943. The airframe's condition showed maintenance practices and supply limits. The engine had wear that suggested production quality issues. The markings showed unit organization and command. Every detail helped build the bigger intelligence picture. In May 1944, the Ki-61 was painted over with American markings and given the test serial number XJ00003. More flight tests were done to plan tactics for American fighters fighting Tonys. The data collected helped training and tactics across the Pacific. In June 1944, TIU got orders to return to the United States. The captured Ki-61 was taken apart and sent to Naval Air Station Anacostia near Washington, D.C. There it was put back together and tested more. In December 1944, the aircraft was painted in fake Japanese markings and flown against American naval fighters. Test pilots flew it against the F-6F Hellcat, F-4U Corsair, and other planes to compare performance. The tests showed that American naval fighters had big advantages in most fights. The F-6F could turn better than the Ki-61 and had better high-altitude performance. The F-4U was faster at all heights and could climb faster than the Tony. Both American planes had better acceleration and stronger weapons. The testing at Anacostia went on through early 1945. Then on July 2, 1945, manufacturer number 263 crashed at Yanceyville, North Carolina during a test flight. The cause was engine failure. Metal pieces were found in the oil system, showing the bearings had worn out. The same problem had troubled the HAR40 engine its whole life. The aircraft that Captain Shogo Takuchi had left at Cape Gloucester 18 months before was destroyed. The wreck was written off, but the intelligence from that one aircraft had already done its job. The data from manufacturer number 263 helped Americans understand Japanese fighter design and ability during an important part of the Pacific War. Captain Takeuchi never learned what happened to his personal plane. He flew back to Rabaul on December 26th and kept flying combat missions. On December 21st, 1943, 5 days before leaving his Ki-61 at Cape Gloucester, Takeuchi took off from Borum Airfield near Weywork on an escort mission. His unit was assigned to protect 48 light bombers attacking American positions at Arway. The mission ran into heavy fighter attacks. American P-38. Lightnings intercepted the formation. In the fight that followed, Takeuchi's Ki-61 was hit many times. The plane caught fire. Takeuchi did not bail out. His aircraft crashed into the jungle near Hansa Bay. He was 25 years old, with 19 confirmed victories, one of the top Ki-61 pilots in the Imperial Japanese Army Air Force. His body was never found. The 68th Centi kept operating in New Guinea through early 1944. They fought a losing battle against strong American air power. Engine failures, no spare parts, poor maintenance facilities, and constant fighting slowly reduced their strength. By March 1944, the unit had been basically destroyed. Survivors. Survivors were moved to other units or sent to fight on the ground as the Japanese position in New Guinea fell apart completely. Lieutenant Mitsuyoshi Tui was the other pilot from the 68th Centi who had major success flying the Ki-61. He and Takeuchi were seen as the top two Tony pilots in the unit. Both started their combat careers flying the fast and nimble K-27. Both had trouble at first with the heavier, less maneuverable Ki-61, but both learned to use the Tony's strengths in speed and firepower. Tui survived longer than Takeuchi. He kept flying Ki-61s after the 68th Centi left New Guinea. He later fought in the Philippines campaign. His final total was 23 confirmed kills, making him one of the most successful Ki-61 pilots of the war. The combat record of the 68th Centi showed both the strengths and the problems of the Ki-61 in real combat. When it was well maintained and flown by skilled pilots who understood it, the Tony was a tough opponent. It could fight American fighters on almost equal terms, but the plane needed constant maintenance. The HAR-40 engine was sensitive and could fail easily. Spare parts were rare. Properly trained mechanics were hard to find. These supply problems limited the Ki-61's usefulness more than any fighting problem. By late 1943, when manufacturer number 263 was left at Cape Gloucester, the Pacific War had clearly turned against Japan. American industry was replacing losses faster than Japan could. Better planes were coming into service on the American side. Japanese pilots were dying faster than new pilots could be trained. The Ki-61, once a modern and strong fighter, was already being passed by events. But the plane still had one more job when American B-29 Superfortress bombers began hitting Japan in late 1944. The Ki-61 was one of the few Japanese fighters that could reach them at high altitude. The 244th Centi was made specifically to defend Tokyo. Started in April 1942 and based at Chofu Air Base, just west of the capital, its mission was to intercept enemy bombers attacking the city. At first, it had old K-27 fighters, but the unit got Ki-61s in early 1944. By October, the 244th Centi had about 40 Ka-61s and had spent months training to fight B-29 raids. The B-29 was unlike anything Japanese fighters had seen. It flew above 30,000 feet. It had heavy guns in remote-controlled turrets. It could take a lot of damage and keep flying. Normal fighter attacks often did not work. The Ki-61 was one of the few Japanese planes that the Ki-61 was one of the few Japanese fighters that could reach B-29 altitude, with enough performance to attack. But even at very high altitude, shooting down a B-29 needed extreme skill and often great courage. On November 7, 1944, the commanding officer of the 10th Air Division issued an order that changed air combat over Japan. He allowed the creation of special ramming attack units. Pilots would deliberately crash their fighters into B-29s to destroy both planes. These attacks were not exactly kamikaze missions. Pilots were supposed to hit the bomber's tail or wing tip, cutting off control surfaces, then bail out before their own plane broke apart. Many pilots survived these attacks. Some did multiple ramming attacks during their careers, but the risk was extremely high. The 244th Centi formed a special ramming flight called the Hagakurtai. The unit was made of volunteers from the Centi's 3 squadrons. First Lieutenant Toru Shinomiya was chosen to lead the ramming flight. Shinomiya was 24 years old, an experienced pilot with many combat missions. He knew the mission would likely be deadly, but he accepted the job without hesitation. On December 3, 1944, a formation of B-29s came near Tokyo. The 244th Centi scrambled all available fighters. Shinomiya led the Hagakurtai toward the bomber stream, climbing at full speed. The Ki-61s had their fuselage guns and armor removed to make them lighter and fly better at high altitude. They carried minimal fuel and only the wing guns. Everything was removed to help reach the high altitude. At 32,000 feet, Shinomiya put his Ki-61 above and behind a B-29 from the 498th Bombardment Group. He dove at the bomber, aiming for the vertical stabilizer. At the last moment, he rolled slightly to hit the tail with his left wing. The collision tore the vertical stabilizer completely off the B-29. The bomber immediately went into an uncontrollable spin. Shinomiya's Ki-61 lost most of its left outer wing panel. The aircraft rolled violently. Shinomiya fought to control it long enough to slow down and lose altitude. At 12,000 feet, he got the fighter to almost level. He jettisoned the canopy and bailed out. His parachute opened properly. He landed in a rice paddy near Chofu Air Base. Rescue crews found him within an hour. He had minor injuries from the bailout, but was otherwise fine. 2 other pilots from the Hagakurtai also rammed B-29s that day. Sergeant Masao Itaki hit a different B-29, but his plane was too damaged to land. He bailed out safely. Sergeant Matsumi Nano rammed a 3rd bomber and managed to crash land his stripped Ki-61 in a field. All 3 pilots survived. The ramming attacks of December 3, 1944 were celebrated all over Japan. The damaged Ki-61s were shown to the public in Tokyo. Shinomiya's plane, missing most of its left wing, was displayed inside the Matsuya department store. Nano's crashed fighter was shown outside. A life-size cutaway drawing of a B-29 fuselage was placed next to them to show the target the pilots had attacked. The 3 pilots became the first to receive the Bukosho, an award created on December 7, 1944 by Emperor Hirohito to honor exceptional bravery in combat. The award was about equal to the American Medal of Honor or the British Victoria Cross. Of the 89 known Bukosho winners in World War II, most were pilots who fought B-29s. The success of the December 3rd ramming attacks encouraged the 244th Centi to keep using the tactic. From December 1944 into early 1945, the unit did dozens of ramming attacks on B-29 formations. The Centi claimed 73 B-29s destroyed by all methods and 92 damaged. These claims were probably too high, as most air combat claims were during World War II, but even considering exaggeration, the 244th Centi caused serious losses to American bomber groups. The unit was led by Captain Teruhiko Kobayashi, starting in November 1944. Kobayashi was 24 years old when he became commander, making him the youngest Centi leader in the Imperial Japanese Army Air Force. He had been a bomber pilot before, taking part in the Battle of Hong Kong in December 1941. He switched to fighters in November 1943 and finished training at the Ano Army Air Service School. Even though he was not very experienced with fighters, Kobayashi proved to be an excellent leader. He flew missions with his pilots instead of directing from the ground. He led by example. His personal courage and bold tactics inspired strong loyalty from the men under his command. Kobayashi did at least one ramming attack himself. On January 27, 1945, he deliberately crashed into a B-29 at high altitude while flying Ki-61 manufacturer number 3295. The collision destroyed the bomber's vertical stabilizer. Kobayashi's Ki-61 lost large parts of both wings. He bailed out safely and parachuted to the ground. He flew combat again the next day in another aircraft. His final total was 3 B-29s and 2 F-6F Hellcats destroyed. Other pilots in the 244th Centi scored even higher. Captain Nagawa Shirai was credited with 11 B-29s and 2 F-6Fs destroyed and 6 other planes damaged. He was considered the top B-29 killer in the Imperial Japanese Army Air Force. Captain Chuichi Ichawa was credited with 9 B-29s and 1 F-6F destroyed, plus 6 B-29s damaged. First Lieutenant Toru Shinomiya, the ramming attack leader, survived many combat missions and kept flying until he was killed in action during the battle for Okinawa. He died as a Tokutai pilot carrying out a normal kamikaze attack against American naval forces. The 244th Centi kept flying Ki-61s through the spring of 1945. In April, the unit began getting 100 Ki fighters, an improved version of the Tony that replaced the troublesome HEAR-40 engine with a reliable Mitsubishi HEAR-1112 radial engine. The Ki-100 proved to be an excellent fighter, much better than the Ki-61 in most ways. On July 25, 1945, Major Kobayashi and his pilots took off in their Ki-100s to fight F-6F Hellcats that were attacking Yokosuka airfield. The unit had been told to stand down and wait for incoming bombers. Kobayashi ignored the order and attacked the American fighters at very low altitude. The fight became a fast dogfight at hangar top height. The 244th Centi claimed 10 Hellcats destroyed. Actual American losses were only 2 planes. The Japanese lost 2 fighters. Japanese newspapers celebrated the action. But Kobayashi faced a court-martial for disobeying orders. The charges were serious and could have led to harsh punishment. However, when Emperor Hirohito learned what Kobayashi had done, he approved of his actions. The court-martial was dropped immediately. Major Kobayashi survived the war. He worked in civilian jobs until 1954, when he joined the newly formed Japan Air Self-Defense Force. He became a fighter pilot again, flying F-86 Sabres. He studied in the United States for 6 months in 1955 and 1956, learning how to fly jets. He kept serving until his death in 1957 at age 36. The combat record of the 244th Centi showed what Japanese pilots could do even in the final desperate months of the war. The unit fought under impossible conditions. Fuel was scarce. Spare parts were almost gone. Replacement planes arrived slowly, if at all. Trained pilots were rare. Yet the unit kept fighting effectively until the end. The ramming attacks by the Hagakuotai showed both the courage and the desperation of Japan's air defense effort. These were not meaningless suicide attacks. They were carefully planned tactical choices made by skilled pilots who knew their aircraft strengths and limits. The Ki-61, stripped of extra weight, could barely reach B-29 altitude. Once there, normal attacks often failed because the fighters could not position themselves well. Ramming attacks worked when guns failed, but the cost was terrible. Pilots who survived one ramming attack were expected to do more until they were killed or too badly hurt to fly. They were treated like dead men even before their first mission. The mental pressure was crushing. Many pilots accepted their fate with calm acceptance. Some found meaning in the sacrifice. Others just did their duty because there was no other choice. The use of ramming attacks showed how badly Japan's strategic position had worsened by late 1944. No country uses such tactics unless all better options are gone. The arrival of the B-29 over Japan in November 1944 marked the beginning of the end. The Japanese home islands were now within reach of American heavy bombers flying from the Mariana Islands. The bombing would get worse through 1945. Japanese air defenses would slowly be defeated. Cities would burn. civilians would suffer greatly. Japanese fighter pilots flying planes like the Ki-61, which were already becoming outdated, kept fighting a battle they could not win. The Kawasaki Ki-61 Hien was never the best fighter of World War II. It was not as maneuverable as the Zero. It was not as fast as late-war American fighters. It was not as heavily armed as German fighters. It had engine problems throughout its service that limited its effectiveness. But the Ki-61 showed Japan's attempt to make a modern fighter that could compete with Allied aircraft. The design included self-sealing fuel tanks, which earlier Japanese fighters did not have. It had pilot armor. It carried heavy weapons by Japanese standards. It was fast and could take damage that would destroy lighter planes. In the hands of skilled pilots like Captain Shogo Takeuchi, Lieutenant Mitsuyoshi Tui, and Major Teruhiko Kobayashi, the Ki-61 proved it could be deadly. These men learned how to use the plane's strengths while reducing its weaknesses. They reached victory totals that showed the Tony's potential when used properly. But personal skill could not fix bigger problems. Japan's industry could not make enough Ki-61s. The Kawasaki HAR-40 engine had constant reliability problems that were never fully fixed. Supplies and logistics broke down under Allied attacks. Pilot training could not keep up with losses. By mid-1945, Japanese air power was basically destroyed. The story of the Ki-61 is the story of Japan's air war in small scale. Early success turned into constant losses and eventual defeat. Technology was strong, but Japan's industry could not keep up. Pilot skill was reduced by too many losses. New tactics could not make up for poor overall strategy. The plane that Captain Takeuchi left at Cape Gloucester in December 1943, manufacturer number 263, became a symbol of this bigger story. Captured intact by American forces, it gave intelligence that helped the Allies understand and fight Japanese fighters. Tested carefully, it showed strengths and weaknesses that affected American tactics and training. It was finally destroyed in a crash caused by the same engine problems that had troubled it all its life. It ended as it began, a victim of technical issues Japan's industry could never fully fix today. Only a few Ki-61s still exist. Some are shown in museums in Japan and the United States. None can fly. The plane now lives mostly in photographs, technical papers, and memories of the men who flew and maintained it. The pilots who became famous flying the Tony are almost all gone. Takeuchi died in combat in 1943. Tui survived the war, but died decades later. Kobayashi lived until 1957. The mechanics and ground crews who kept the troublesome HAR-40 engines working are mostly forgotten, but the record of their work remains. Captain Takeuchi had 19 victories. Lieutenant Toi had 23 confirmed kills. Major Kobayashi destroyed 3 B-29s and led Japan's most famous home defense unit, the 244th Senti, which claimed 73 B-29's 9 pilots received the Bukosho Award. These numbers tell a story of skill, courage, and sacrifice against overwhelming odds. The Kawasaki Ki-61 was Japan's answer to a problem the country could not solve: how to defeat an enemy with much stronger industry, technology, and strategy. The Ki-61 was well designed. It was well built. It was flown by brave and skilled pilots. But it was not enough. Nothing Japan could build would have been enough. The Pacific War was decided by forces far beyond any single plane. Yet the men who flew the Ki-61 deserve to be remembered. They fought for a cause history judges harshly. They served a government that committed terrible crimes. But they were human beings who showed remarkable courage in combat. They faced death again and again and did not flinch. They kept fighting even when the war was clearly lost. They showed the best qualities of warrior tradition even while serving a wrong cause. Their story is complicated. It cannot be told as just heroism or villainy. It requires seeing both sides and understanding the full picture. The skill they showed and the situation in which they used that skill are important. But the story needs to be told. The Ki-61 deserves to be remembered, not as the best fighter of the war, but as a capable plane that served well in impossible conditions. Not as a war-winning weapon, but as a plane that could be very effective in the right hands. Not as a symbol of Japanese air superiority, but as proof of what Japanese engineers and pilots could achieve, even as their nation's overall situation fell apart. If you found this story interesting, like we did, please take a moment to like this video. It helps us share more forgotten stories from World War II. Subscribe to stay connected with these untold histories. Every story matters. Every story should be remembered, and we would love to hear from you. Leave a comment below and tell us where you are watching from. Our community stretches across the whole world. From veterans to history fans, you are part of something special here.